We are recording.
Brilliant. Superb. So absolutely wonderful to see so many of you here this evening. I'm Ebony Escalona, 1/4 of VetYou, and I'll be one of your co-hosts for tonight. And we are going to be covering all things pension. Woo! This is a sexy subject, I guarantee it, especially with the guests that we have on today. And actually, it's really interesting because we put out recently, what do you want to know more about? And you guys said, we want to hear about pensions again. So we're actually brought back our wonderful guests, Andrew Snowball, IFA, and Phil from Raindrop, to come in and give us a really good chat about pensions and cover some of the brilliant questions that you have pre-submitted during the registration process for this event. So for those of you who don't know how this works, essentially this is your power hour with this brilliant lot. There is no such thing as a stupid question, and actually I can see my pal Adrian Nelson Pratt is in the room, and he always taught me that the only stupid question is the one that isn't asked. So I guarantee if you're thinking about it, I'll be thinking about it, and so will lots of other people. The whole point of this is to help demystify, get those questions you just wish you could have had a financial expert or a financial professional, or someone in that realm to answer those for you. So get in the chat, pop it in. Guarantee other people will be thinking it, but we're also aware that sometimes we don't want to say something about something personal or financial to the world. So do feel free to private message Paul Horwood, who's got VetYou with his name as well, and Matt Dobbs is there too. But I know that Andrew, Vivan, and Phil are also really happy to take private questions as well, but they'll try and answer them to the whole group, because again, like I said, if you're thinking it, I guarantee someone else will be thinking it. And for those of you who don't know us, then VetYou is a vet-led community that helps members of our profession to actually think about securing their financial prosperity in a way that works for them, because we're a lovely bunch of employed, self-employed, locums, diversifiers, you name it. And we're not always great at putting ourselves first. We're great at putting lots of pets and people first, but actually it's so important that we can kind of take control of our financial future. And as Andrew says, a pension is a fund, and so we are actually thinking about that future fund for us. So just to break the ice a bit, just in the chat, put down what words do you associate when you think of the word pension. I want you to just put in the chat, what do you think about when someone says to you pensions? So yeah, we've got retirement coming through. Asian saying being old. Helen, I'm with you. Boring. Not anymore though, I tell you. Stocks and bonds, good times. Money geek, a mystery. Louise, I'm so with you on that as well. Yep. So I think it's really important that we start to look at that, because that kind of showcases our mindset towards something that can actually really help us in the future. And so many of you have said, I put my head in the sand, and what we're hoping today is that you get your answers to some of your financial questions here, but also some really good avenues for you to actually go and take action for things that will work for you. And we're giving you an array of different professionals here that can help you as well. So we've kind of introduced a little bit about who we are. Our guests will introduce themselves a bit further as well. Get your questions into the chat. We have also collated questions that you've pre-submitted too. If we don't get through them because we run out of time, we're going to give our details so that we can get in contact with you. You can get in contact with us, and we can answer those for you as well. We've got Andrew Snowball, our independent financial advisor, giving us a kind of a pension 101, because I tell you what, I don't know much about the difference between state and employed workplace pension versus flexible pensions and everything like that. Then we've also got the brilliant Raindrop, who are going to talk us through how kind of a flexible personal pension can work and what they can do for you. Because I know that I massively was like, how do I even collate all my old pensions? Well, they will have some really good avenues for you to explore with that. And then we've got some offers and giveaways as well from our guests, and then we'll take the Q&A as well. But we will take Q&A throughout, so we'll keep an eye on the chat as well for that. Brilliant. So, Paul, let's have our first poll. So on a scale of 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, with 1 being I'm absolutely clueless, and 10 feeling like I know what I need to do next. How confident do you feel about taking steps to support your pensions? These could be workplace, these could be flexible personal pensions. So we're just having a look and seeing, you know, where we're at confidence-wise in these. So Paul, what have we got?
Right, we're just about 80%. A couple more people. I'll leave it open for another few more seconds. 1 more person. Excellent. Let's have a look. So an awful lot of people are clueless. There's 1s and 2s and 3s. There's a couple of experts up there at sort of 6 and 7%, 6 and 7. No one up there at 9 and 10.
Cool. So we're really hoping we're going to move you a few notches up at least, and help you to take some action. Fab. So yeah, we've kind of covered, I think most of you kind of know who VetYou are, but we've got Paul, myself, Ebony, Matt, and I think the important part here is that we're all a diverse bunch in terms of the type of veterinary we have practiced, the type of businesses we have owned or ran or been part of, from owners and employers through to freelancers and side hustlers. So we come with an array of kind of interest in all of you in terms of what you do and how we can support you. And we've all had our own journeys, good and bad, with finances, and we really like to talk about it. We can kind of decrease that stigma of kind of not feeling confident to talk about money and finances and what you're all worth, because you're all worth a hell of a lot more than you think. So that's why we want to showcase who we were. And we're also joined by the fabulous Raindrop, which is Vivan and Phil. And they've been working in the tech and finance markets for a number of years. And we've also got Andrew Snowball, who you will also probably recognise because he's been on our journey with us with VetYou as an independent financial advisor as well. All of these individuals are really interested in the vet space. They're interested in us as professionals, and they hear and see some of our challenges and opportunities, and they're very much on our side to help us. And I personally use all 3 of them for my financial bits and bobs as IFAs and pension providers. So I can speak and say that I use them, and I'm really, really happy with the service and support that they've provided me. Brilliant. So we are going to, we're just going to quickly do our last little kind of poll here about who you are and who's in the room. And this means that it can help Phil, Vivan and Andrew tailor their questions, because some of us might be employed, some of us might be freelance, some of us might be a bit of both. We might be a student or something else. So do share as well if you want to add some colour and context to what you're up to, and then they can obviously provide support and answers that will be helpful to you. Because the more we know about you, the more we can help you in a personalised way as well. So what are we looking like there, Paul?
Cool. Just up at 80%, 1 or 2 more people to go, but it looks like the majority, so 2/3 are employed. Yeah, so about 2/3 employed, 1/3 freelance through limited company. I'll just stop it there and share the results. So yeah, not surprisingly, majority employed, but you know, there's a 1/3 of us who are sort of owning limited companies, etc.
Cool. We've got some people in the chat as well saying, yeah, I'm employed and I've got my own limited company, so a bit of a mix too. Brilliant. So I am going to hand over to our first guest, who is Andrew Snowball. But get your questions in as he's chatting, and he will certainly happily weave in answers to that as well as we go. But he's going to give us a really good overview of what they are, what they're not, and what to look out for.
I can't
hear me. I was on mute. Okay, good evening, everyone. As Ebony said, I'm Andrew Snowball, independent financial advisor. Really happy to be talking to you about pensions today. I love pensions. I think they're fantastic. They've changed a lot in recent years, offering a great amount of flexibility. So as you can see, these are the main things that I'm going to talk about to hopefully improve your knowledge around pensions. And as Ebony mentioned, feel free to fire off any questions that you may have. So what is a pension? Pension is essentially a long-term savings vehicle that has some really great tax benefits. They can even be set up by yourself or your employer, or you can have a state pension. So a state pension is funded through your national insurance contributions. A minimum of 10 years national insurance contributions will make you eligible for a state pension. You need 35 years minimum to receive a full state pension. Depending on the age group on this webinar, it seems like a million years away from when you actually start drawing your pension. But the important part there is that in today's money, it's probably about £10,000 a year that will be offered from the state, which for most of us isn't going to be enough to live on, or at least fund the lifestyle that we want in retirement. So that underlines the importance of saving or investing into a pension. So how does a pension work? Well, essentially, you put in some funds and or your employer puts in some funds. Those funds, i.e. your contributions, are invested and they accumulate in value because of the investment and provide you a return, which is compounded over time, which provides you with a lump sum in retirement. When you get to a retirement age, any age from 55 is the earliest you can do it currently, you have the option of drawing 25% tax-free or drawing an income from it, or a combination of two. I won't go into loads of the different options that are available, but the important part to acknowledge and recognize is it's a long-term savings investment, and at the end of it you've got lots of options in terms of how you draw that pension. Now, how you draw that will depend on the type of retirement you want and your needs at that time, and it'll be different for each individual. You can have lots of pensions. So you can have your workplace pension, you can have your own pension, you can have a combination of the two. My guidance would be to try and simplify the process in terms of having one or a maximum of two pensions, just to allow you to understand what you've got and have a consistent investment approach, and also to make it easier to manage as you go through your work life. So the real importance of having a pension, as I alluded to before, is it supplements your retirement income. So when you retire, you'll have hopefully your state pension and or other sources of income. Now that can come from property, it can come from other investments, but your pension is a great way to help fund that for a couple of reasons. One, for every £100 that you put into a pension, the state will give you an additional 20% tax relief on top of that. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you're able to claim an additional 20% for your tax return. And if you're an additional rate taxpayer, you're able to claim an additional 25% for your tax return. Now, the government's never going to send you a letter, if for those that might be in a higher rate tax bracket or in the future might be in a higher rate tax bracket, the government's not going to send you a letter saying you must complete your tax return and come and get this extra cash that we've got for you. So it's something to keep in your mind. And what that does is it helps either reduce your tax bill or increase your contributions into your pension. Now, as I mentioned before, what determines the size of the pot that you have in retirement will depend on the contributions and how long you've been contributing for. So it's really, really important to start your pension contribution as early as possible to benefit from the compounding effect of the growth, and also to understand the relationship between risk and return. So if you're quite far away from your retirement age, you can afford to take on more risk. Now, some of the pitfalls that people will have is that they, especially through a workplace pension scheme, is that they'll fall into the default pension, which may not allow you to take on as much risk as you can afford to at the early years. So it's really important to understand the relationship between risk and return. And I think the guys from Raindrop might be able to demonstrate or illustrate the compounding effect of one, starting early when it comes to your pension contributions, and show the impact of just delaying it by a few years. And I can't remember, but potentially demonstrating the difference between the risk and return as well. So auto enrollment, we'll cover that off. That is a regulatory requirement from your employer to offer you a pension. It's 8% that's paid in gross, so 3% is from your employer and 5% is from you. Excuse me. And 5% is from you. So it's a great start, but if you do the math and you look at what your current salary is and what the contributions are and how long you're likely to be working for, the sum at the end probably isn't going to give you the kind of retirement income that you want. So as a rule of thumb, you should look to save between 15 to 20% of your salary, remembering that 8% of that's already made up. And a good way to work towards that is slowly build up the increment in terms of what you're contributing each year. I'm not sure if I covered all topics there. Paul, do you want to just go back one? Right, so a couple of things. So in terms of your contributions, I've just gone over the rates for auto enrollment, but something you should know about pensions is that you can contribute up to 100% gross of your salary, capped at £40,000 a year. If you haven't made pension contributions in the past, but your salary's increased and perhaps you've had a bumper year, especially if you're self-employed or have a limited company, you can utilise something that's called carry forward, which allows you to make a larger contribution than £40,000. But again, speak to an advisor or do some research into when that would apply to you. Is there any direct questions that we have, or any questions that come in I can answer?
There's one which hopefully you'll be able to, there's quite a few questions coming in, but I'll ask this one first off. You mentioned 35 years or so, you need to do a certain number of years to get your £10,000 full state pension. And a few people are asking around, what does each year mean? What do you have to do? Does it have to be full-time? Can you do part-time? What if you're not earning that much? What does a 1 year qualifying year mean?
So it's based on your earnings, whether you get a full year. So let's assume if you're earning, let's say, over £15,000 a year, then you're going to be okay in terms of your credit for that particular year. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head. If people need to know those figures, I can ping that to you later on. But broadly speaking, if you're a low earner, so I'm not making national insurance contribution, so what's that? It's under £9,000, or is it 8,500? Then you wouldn't be making the national insurance contributions and making those. So it's important. That's one of the things that's important if you are a limited company and you're being paid dividends and income. Just one of those things to be aware of. But your accountant would make sure that you're making those contributions.
Great, thanks, Andrew. That's useful to know that, as long as you earn over about 8.5 grand part time, then that counts as a year. But also, if those of us who are paying through dividends, make sure we're earning salary at that price as well. And just a final one before we move on to the Raindrop guys. I was just wondering if you could. Lots of people ask, why pension? Why not ISA? If I put my money in an ISA, I can get it back straight away. If I put my money in a pension, I can't. Why don't I just end up with a massive ISA instead of a pension?
So it's for a couple of reasons. So I talked about the tax relief, although there are other reliefs available in terms of lifetime ISAs and things like that. Really, if you're investing in an ISA, it's a question of flexibility and access. So if you're going to need those funds prior to age 55 in this example, then an ISA might be better for you. But ultimately, they're both tax efficient vehicles, and the underlying investments will be quite similar. So it's more to do with circumstance, really. But as I mentioned before, you have the tax reliefs in terms of the offsetting from income tax liability as well. And also, you can contribute more if you've got the available disposable income into a pension than you can into an ISA. So there are lots of options which is something I should underline in terms of saving for your retirement. A pension's one of them, and it works better from a long-term perspective because of the tax breaks that you get from pensions. But you can do both.
Awesome. Any more, Matt, Ebony? Is anything more coming in to you guys?
Maybe just something I think that's super kind of important, especially in a highly feminized profession, but not always. What about mothers and fathers taking time off because of having kids and stuff? How does that affect pensions and contributions? And is there anything that we can be mindful of to support our future with that in mind?
So it's planning, so planning ahead, and making sure as well, excuse me, that when you are entitled to child benefit, that you do apply for it, because as the mother in this example, your national insurance contributions will still be made for you if you apply for that benefit. If you don't, then you'll miss out.
That's a really important thing that I did not know. So thank you for that. That's really important.
And Andrew, we've got a question the opposite way round from somebody saying, can you max out your state pension contributions with a good salary before you reach 35 years of contribution?
No, not in terms of max out. It's years of contribution as opposed to value of contribution. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
We will keep the questions coming in because we will we'll have more time at the end just to have a big group like chat as well. So just keep them coming in.
Cool. Ebs, if I can just jump in here before we hand over to the Raindrop guys, quite a few. I'm just going to talk for 30 seconds or so. those who know me will know that it'll probably be a minute. I'll try and have a little chat about ethical investing. A few people have started asking about it. I'm the treasurer of VetLife, and we've been looking at this quite a lot and have moved a lot of our funds for VetLife into this ethical investing. The idea behind it is, when you are putting your money into savings, investments, pensions, ISAs, whatever it is, you can actually start to specify what that money is then used for. And the idea behind ethical investing started off a few years ago with being a negative, as in we don't want our money put into certain categories. They might be nuclear weapons, armaments, tobacco, alcohol, those sorts of industries, oil, those industries that perhaps you feel strongly about in terms of their impact on people and the planet, which is fine. And there's a lot of companies out there now doing that. But in the last couple of years, it's changed from being like a negative, from a no, we don't want to invest in these areas, to now starting to be, what about a positive? Can we positively now allocate our money towards companies which are better looking after the planet, better governed, better looking after their employees? Perhaps it's rather than just saying we don't want that, maybe we can start thinking about positively, we do want our money to be pushed into companies which look after their employers, which don't cut down the rainforest, for example, etc., etc. So it's an area to think about, and it's perhaps something that you might want to think about. It does potentially limit some of your investment areas. Potentially it doesn't. I'm just going to start a poll now and see what everyone thinks in terms of your thoughts on ethical investing as an option for you.
And just to let you know that all the poll results are anonymous, so we can't see what people are saying at all. So there is, it's everyone's own opinion. And for those of you who maybe are ticking unsure if you're up for sharing either privately or in the main chat box, it'd be lovely to know kind of what you'd want to know more about when it came to that ethical investment kind of portfolio.
Grand. I think we're coming to an end there, about 80-90%. Cool. And not Not surprisingly, no one said no. A big proportion of people would like to have that as an option. Some people would like a little bit more information, perhaps, on what that means, and learning a little bit more about it. It's something that I'm learning more and more about, because the more you get into it, the more complicated it becomes. Like, you could say, well, I don't want my money going towards tobacco and alcohol because I feel that they might have an impact. But what about investing in Tesco's? Tesco's makes a lot of money selling alcohol and tobacco. What about logistics companies that move tobacco and alcohol about? So it's one of those things that when you sit initially, you think it's very easy, and the more you get into the detail, the more complicated it gets, as most things do in this life. Great. Right, Ebbs, should we move on to Raindrop?
Yeah, and I think actually there's some really good questions coming through the chat, which I believe Phil and Vivan will be covering. We've got some great questions like, are employer pensions worth it? What if you end up changing jobs and have multiple small employer pensions? I was that. What should I do about them? So I think these types of questions are great, because I think we're going to get those answered by the Raindrop team. Super. So Phil, you should have the ability to override some screen sharing, I believe. But I mean, this is quite a nice little slide to remind us. But yeah.
Yeah, I probably know it off by heart anyway, so I can sort of mention. But yeah, I think that slide there was sort of there to talk about why we started Raindrop initially, and I'll just share my screen. But it's going to be a product, but I'll just talk about that slide before we go into it. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
So perfect. So here at Raindrop, basically we've gone and created a digital and flexible pension that was initially targeted at the self-employed. And the reason why we went and did that is we saw this crazy statistic that only 16% of the 5 million self-employed people here in the UK are actually contributing to a pension. And for us, that was kind of crazy. So when we delved into it a little bit deeper, kind of started to make sense, because most people, as you mentioned, have accumulated these pensions through their old employers, through their workplaces. And obviously most self-employed people don't have an employer or someone to go and set up a pension for them, therefore don't really know where to get started, don't want to deal with all the paperwork and the admin that's sort of required with applying for a pension. And then secondly, even for the ones that do exist, they just weren't fit for purpose. When you're self-employed and your income is variable, you can't really commit to paying in £500 every month when you don't know when your next paycheck is coming in. So on the back of that, we wanted to create this completely digital and flexible pension solution. And by flexible, I'm talking about the fact that you can turn off and on your contributions at the click of a button, which I'll show you now in a second through the demo, but also that you can contribute directly from your limited company if you're someone that's trying to save on your corporation tax bill, as well as contributing personally, which allows you to reap that tax top up 25% back that Andrew mentioned before, and even more if you're a higher tax rate payer. So that was sort of the mission statement behind Raindrop initially. The other flexibility angle I should mention as well that we worked on, that sort of Ebony was talking about, is we also help you now to go and find all of those old pensions. With the sort of changing nature of work, the average person these days is going through about 11 different jobs. And a great initiative from the UK government was to force employers to set up a pension for their employees every time. But now that means as more people are moving through jobs, that they end up with a lot of small and lost pots, and they don't know who provided that pension. They know they may have worked at Tesco's, etc., but they don't know who the underlying provider or administrator of that pension was. And so we built a solution that allows us to go and find those pensions for you, take all the admin off of your hands, so you don't have to be on the phone for hours with them or have to send them physical mail, as we've seen in all these horrendous processes. And then we bring together it for you in one place in Raindrop, and allow you choice as well, the flexibility to either consolidate it with us or take that information, speak to a financial advisor like Andrew if you need a little bit more confidence and want to understand what's going on. So that's maybe the rationale behind Raindrop. And now I'm just going to give a little quick demo of what we built here, so you can see hopefully how simple and easy it is to set one up. And I guess the important message here, as Andrew might have mentioned before, is that the important thing is really just to start getting started. Even if you have as little as £1, as soon as you start putting that in and you start getting the benefits of compound interest, and you'll hopefully see through this, you'll see how much your pension can grow. So here at Raindrop, we want to help you set up a pension in 4 steps in less than 10 minutes. We'll show you what it could be worth. We're going to help you pick an investment, and we'll talk about ethical investments when we get there, that could get you there. And then we're just going to quickly verify your identity digitally and automatically, which then allows us to allow you to open your account with as little as £1, whether that's one-off or recurring. So initially, the first sort of bits of information we need from you are your date of birth. This helps us to go and estimate the value of your pension. We need to know how old you are and when you'd like to retire. If you're not too sure what this number is, the state pension age that we talked about before is currently 68. So that's when you can start drawing out of the state pension at the moment. But from a personal pension, legislation says that you can take it out from 55. But either way, you have the complete flexibility and you can change this at any point in time later on. If you're self-employed or employed here, you can select that. The only real difference here is that if you're the director of a limited company, you can choose to pay in from your company as well. And I'll show you what difference that does before as well in a second. So as a simple calculation, if you were paying in £250 there, you were born, sorry, I put my birthday in there, but and then you ended at 65, you'd end up having a potential pot of around £172,000 at 65. And that's sort of a realistic sort of projection. And you can see here that you would have contributed £110,000, but we're very transparent that you would have gotten £27,000 just in tax relief. And that's the important sort of tax element that we talked about that the government gives you back to incentivize you to save for your retirement. And then obviously your money will be invested in some stocks and bonds of companies that we'll talk about in a second. And the potential growth of that could get you up another 121,000. But then again, another thing we're transparent on is this concept of inflation. And my best way of sort of explaining that is that about 20 or 30 years ago, the price of bread was around about 50p, but today it's closer to £1. So that means that if you had £1 30 years ago, you could have gotten 2 loaves of bread, but today you could only get 1. And so this inflation is not really, you haven't lost £87,000. It just means you would get £87,000 less worth of bread, let's say, by the time you retire at 65. And so that means that this overall pension is worth about £172,000 in today's money. But what's really powerful, what we've seen a lot of people really enjoy, is that you can go and take that number now and see how long that might last you at retirement. So if you were to spend £2,500 every month, if you think that's what you need to survive, remembering that the state pension is around, as Andrew mentioned, £10,000 for a year, you're thinking about how much would you need on top. You could see that your pension here might only last you to your 73. So you might need to lower your budget down to sort of £1,000, and then it will last you 81. Or you can try and see, well, what happens instead if I go up to putting in £400, at which point my pension might be worth 270, and now it lasts me to 91, and I feel a lot more comfortable. But I want to also see what happens in an optimistic scenario. Wow, now that's £515,000, and I can go and live at the Ritz every day. So you can have a little play around and sort of get comfortable with the numbers, so that you really know what you're aiming for. So having done that, and the other thing I should just quickly mention, although I won't go through it here, is the calculation changes if you're the director of a limited company. You can opt in to pay it, and the journey is just simple, but I won't go through it today, where you can see how much it would be worth if you paid in from a limited company. Notice the difference is you won't get the tax relief directly back, but you will save on your corporation tax, or you have the ability to save on your corporation tax bill. So I was going to put that back to self-employed. And we're also open to it as well. I should just mention the need for a flexible pension is not just for the self-employed, as a normally employed person can get one too. So the second step we talked about was about picking an investment option. And here we just talk about the benefits of investing and why it's sort of a required thing. Your money won't really grow above inflation to beat that cost of bread increasing unless you invested in sort of bonds and stocks, etc. And with our solution, we try to keep things very simple, where we charge a one all-in fee of 0.75%. Now, why we say one all-in fee there is because we feel some other providers are intransparent, where they offer a fee for the pension itself, but also another fee for the funds and the investments on top. We put that all into one, so you don't get any other fees other than that. And again, we want to emphasize that we're completely secure. All of your investments are protected by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which means you get up to £85,000 back if anyone within this sort of that we use in our infrastructure was to have any problems. Not that we would ever expect that. And that we've made options that we consider to be simple and specifically for pensions. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more. And the other point, as we mentioned before, is that we're also looking to launch an ethical options. We've also seen how important that is for most people. That will be coming fairly soon. And the ethical options that we'll be offering will not invest in tobacco, guns, or any environmentally polluting companies, companies that have sort of poor social policies when it comes to potential child labor and things like that. But it's important to note that as we work with one of the biggest asset managers in the world to invest your money, BlackRock, that even the sort of simple retirement options that we offer that I'll explain in a second, even they are moving towards a more ethical world. And I think the whole asset management industry is doing that, where even sort of the normal sort of investments are getting a little bit more ethically friendly. So the way our investment options work, or our simple ones do, is that we try to remove this concept of risk from the equation, because sometimes we feel that some people don't know if they're low risk or high risk or medium risk. And instead we want to say to you, when do you want to retire? And therefore, what is the fund that maybe is most appropriate for someone of my age looking to retire at 65? And the idea behind that is that when you're young, it usually makes more sense to take a little bit more risk because you've got a little bit longer to go until you retire. And as you get older, it usually, depending on your personal circumstances, of course, makes sense to take a little bit less risk. And that's because of the fact that you're approaching retirement and you don't want to lose all of your pension money just before you need to start taking out. So once you put those numbers in, you'll see a list of funds here. And again, they'll have an appropriate age. So for me, I might pick this one. I can see how that fund has done or how that investment has done over time. And I have a high level overview of what assets in it, of what's in it in terms of company debts or company stock, and any sort of frequently asked questions that I won't go through today because I think I've talked through most of it anyway. So I select this, I can simply move forward. You can see here that's pretty much the hardest part of the process. And just to rush through the last few segments, you simply need to answer 6 quick questions. Are you a UK tax resident? What's your full legal name? What's your nationality? What's your marital status? We know some of these questions are quite personal, but we make it very clear that unfortunately these are just questions that the government requires when setting up a pension so that we can go and get that tax relief for you, etc. And then you pop in your national insurance number. So I'll just put a random one here for now. And at this point, we need your permanent residential address. Again, this is to verify your identity. And once we've done that and pop that in, we'll play back this information to you. All of these documents, as I'm sure you're probably aware with a lot of financial products, they're available in your dashboard at any time, very sort of standard stuff, but you should have a little read through to make sure you're comfortable. And once you are, you apply for your Raindrop pension. At this point, we're just going and quickly verifying your identity in the background. And once that's done, you can go and set up your direct debit. So at this point here, I simply put in my sort code. These are just test account numbers. And I can set to do just a one-off if I just want to try it out for a little bit and see how comfortable I get. Except that I'm the only person that can set up this direct debit, and we play back the details to you so you can check that everything's okay. And at this point, we're now going and creating your pension, setting up your direct debit, and sorting all of that out for you digitally. Usually takes around sort of 15, 20 seconds. And once that's complete, I'll just show you through to the dashboard so that I can show you this sort of pension finding service that we talked about before that we offer. It hopefully shouldn't take too long. And hopefully it's a fairly quick and painless process. I don't know if any questions came in during that time because my screen sharing isn't letting me see.
Lots.
I did see a 27 up there now. So maybe I'll just quickly go through this now that we've gotten to the end here. So this will now take me hopefully to my dashboard. Once this loads, perfect. And once your first payment goes in, you will see the value of your pension here. But just to emphasize the last quick thing I wanted to show, was we have this nice little button here called Find Your Pensions. When you do that, our friendly little bot will pop up and he'll ask you some very quick questions so we can help go and deliver that for you. If you have a pension statement, you can upload one. That makes things a lot quicker for us, but we generally don't expect people to. So you'd say that you can't upload one right now. And again, most people don't know who the pension provider was, as we mentioned, and you can say I don't here. And that's fine as well. At that point, we ask if it's a personal pension or a workplace, and that generally means, did you get this pension when you were working for an employer? If so, you pick workplace pension. Simply tell us who that employer was. So, it might have been at Barclays, and tell us the dates that you worked there. And that's because your employer might change pension provider during that time. So we only need rough dates as well. This doesn't need to be exact, but maybe I started in 2018 and I finished roughly in 2020, let's say. When this loads up. And that's it. That's all the information we need. We will be very transparent with you instead of saying that we need your consent for the data that we're going to use. And as long as you consent to that, then we'll go ahead and find your pension for you and reach out to your provider and do all of that in the background. So that's probably an overview of everything, all the main sort of stuff. I'm not sure where I've gone on time. If I have a little bit, I can show through the calculator. We can go through some questions first.
Cool. I'll dive off. Yeah, loads and loads of questions, as you would imagine, coming in, Phil. A couple of people just raising a few points around, and I suppose being vets, we're all quite cynical. The pension projections, a few people have said pension projections, they always massively overestimate. I never really believe that I'm ever going to retire with the millions that you say I'm going to retire on. Can you sort of just quickly, I don't know, expand on your calculator, that sort of stuff? How realistic, those sort of questions?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. To be honest, I feel like we're incredibly transparent with our particular offering there. I mean, as I showed you there, we offer both pessimistic, realistic, and optimistic. And if you look at the pessimistic scenarios, the amount of money you'll have after that projection would still be higher. It's just that when you account for the fact that the price of bread goes up, etc., it might look a little bit lower. So, I mean, you can go through that, and we can even run through. We have another separate calculator here, which is a free to use service on our website, which I'm sure we can link everyone to later, where you can do a similar calculation. And this one doesn't actually have the scenario analysis, but if you go through the app, you'll see that. So I think that that's very transparent, that we literally give you the option to go through what would be pessimistic. And those projections also, they include our fees as well. So we're not even saying that, we're not being opaque in the sense of this is what your projection looks like, and then after fees, you know, we take a chunk away. That's all incorporated into that. But we use very standard industry assumptions there, which are guidelined by the Financial Conduct Authority as well. So I think it's pretty industry standard. We just go the extra level to actually show you a pessimistic as well scenario as well. So yeah, I have no qualms with it myself, and I think it's done to the most transparent it could be.
I must say, I love that when I first spoke with you guys, the fact that it's all there and you can see exactly where it is. It's not just you know, someone telling me a number, etc. The other really nice thing that I liked about this is how transparent you are with the fee that you charge. I was just wondering if you could go a little bit more into that. I actually tried, I've got a pension, I won't say which provider it is, I took it out when I was a lot younger, and it took me an awful long time. It took me about 3 hours to find out how much they charged me each year in their annual percentage. They did not tell me. It was very, very difficult to find out. You've mentioned 0.75. A few people have mentioned that they've got one which is a lot higher. What's normal? What's happy? You know, what should we be looking for? I don't know if you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The first thing that I should mention, and I should have shown actually through the demo, but we also have it on our website, so maybe I can quickly show that, is that I can completely understand that 0.75% doesn't always mean something to everybody. But what we do have is the ability to turn that into an actual monthly fee that might make more sense. So if you had £10,000, we can convert that into, and we do this in the app as well, to show you that that's the equivalent of a monthly fee of £6.25, just so that it makes maybe more sense to more people. Now, on that fee itself, so I'll be clear, that fee breaks down into two main parts. And that's the 0.54% that you pay Raindrop, effectively our fee for going and managing your pension and doing the tax reclaim from the HMRC, from the government, etc. And 0.21% that gets paid to BlackRock, who are managing the investments and the money on your behalf. So what most other providers, or a lot of providers, do is that they will just say an outright fee of 0.5% or 0.45, but they won't tell you what the fee is, or you'll have to go and add the fee on top for the actual investments. The other important thing to mention is that there's no account opening fee. There's no fee to move if you want to. There's no fee to bring it into us. So there's absolutely no other fees in any other way. Because we're completely digital, obviously we're not sending posts or anything like that. So, you know, there's no associated cost with that. Because we made it fully digital, it allows us to keep everything pretty streamlined in terms of costs. In terms of sort of industry expectations, yes, if you have an old school provider like the National Employment Savings Trust, they're typically a bit more expensive. If you're going for a more modern fintech platform, then we're basically ballpark in the same order of price as those guys. I will be honest that we will not be able to compete with a sort of Vanguard, but we hope that with the level of customer service, the fact that we go out to take off all the issue of finding your own pensions, the flexibility in the product, and the complete digital nature of it are what make us better than maybe a big legacy incumbent.
Cool. Yeah, I love the fact that it's there in your face. I know how much, which was cool. Matt, Ebony, was there anything else there that's coming through? I'm just looking up. There's so many questions coming in. I'm just trying to scroll through and find them.
It looks like we've got lots of questions. Someone's just asked, can someone explain the tax back thing again, please? I'm not understanding what is claimed back. With a workplace pension, I thought it's just a salary sacrifice that effectively reduces the income you're taxed on. There is something to claim back in addition to this. So if anyone's able to clear that one up again for us.
Andrew,
You go for it?
Yeah, I can give the high level maybe as well. So maybe the best way to sort of explain it in my head is, so if you were going to get paid £100 by your employer, and they put that £100 into your pension, if you were sort of a basic rate taxpayer, you would have paid 20% of that in sort of tax, obviously passing the personal allowance. So you can imagine that if you'd have taken that money directly from your employer, that £100 would have become £80. But instead, because they put it directly into your pension, you get the full £100, and therefore you're not paying that 20% or £20 worth of tax. Now that's in a workplace pension. For a personal pension, you've obviously taken your £100 from your employer, and they've been taxed on it by the basic tax rate, and you've received £80. But because the government tries to make an equivalence in fairness between the two, when you put that £80 into your personal pension, the government gives you the £80 back directly into pension, which effectively is the equivalent of getting 25% back, because the £20 on the 80 is £20 more on top. I think that's the best way of explaining it. And then if you're a higher rate taxpayer, i.e. if you paid 45%, you can go and claim the rest of that tax back, but that has to be done through your self-assessment at the end of the year. If you have anything to add on that, Andrew?
No, the only thing I'd add is, I'm not on it yet. The only thing I'd add is that not all workplace pensions are salary sacrifice. Most of them are, or at least heading that way, because it saves the employer or national insurance contributions, so it saves them some money. But it's not a given that that's the situation. So it's important to understand what type of scheme.
I know, that's why I tried to do it earlier.
Scheme or a relief at source scheme. Oh.
Thank you. Really well explained, both of you. Hopefully that clears that up for the person that's just popped that in the chat. We've got another along the lines of employer pension saying, is it better to increase your contribution via your employer pension or to open up a new personal pension to make up a certain amount per month?
Do you want me to go again, Andrew? Or? Yeah, I'll be completely transparent on, obviously we're a personal pension solution, but usually the benefit of a workplace pension is that you will get employer matching. So your employer will contribute alongside. And so generally it typically makes sense to do that. But that might max out at a certain point, and you're not, and it can always make sense to have a personal pension on the side for a couple of reasons. A, because once you stop working for that employer, as we mentioned, then they won't be contributing to it anymore. So you might be wanting to move all of the other old jobs that you've had that you're not receiving that benefit into anymore into one place, which could be your personal pension. It makes sort of sense to keep that in one place. And also, if you just keep growing that a little bit more, then you can contribute to your personal pension on the side of your workplace. But typically, and again, it depends completely on your personal circumstances. So we can't really give personal advice here, but I would say that generally it does make sense to increase your workplace pension once first. Andrew, anything to add as well?
Yeah, I concur. If you're gonna be increasing, or you can have increase your pension contributions, at least in the early stages, do it with your employer. Perhaps when you change work, then get a personal pension. For broadly speaking, most employer-based schemes are going to be cheaper than what's out in the market as well. And they do a good job. They may not be as flexible, or as sexy as other pensions, but they do a good job. And unless you have a real motivation from an investment perspective, or issues with a company, then it makes sense to keep things as simple as possible. But it all depends on the individual.
Super. Thank you both very much. Again, very clearly explained, so thank you. We've just got one that was tagged on to the end of that as well, which is similar again when we're looking at employer based pensions. They're saying, do you just ask your employers if they offer an option to add on to the pension by choice, or how do you actually go about doing that? I appreciate there might be a lot of different answers for this one.
Yeah, I mean, it does depend, but usually when you register with a workplace pension scheme, you'll be sent login details, and you can contact the administrator directly, because your employer will do it through your payroll, and you might want to do it on a regular basis or an ad hoc basis. So it makes more sense for you to contact them directly and do that yourself. And you can, in most cases, you can do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. I'm just looking through because there are so many messages keep firing into the chat. I jumped on a little later and I was sifting through them, and they were coming through at a rate of knots. So obviously a very conversation opening topic. Have you spotted anything else in there as well, Paul? I spotted you and Vivan as well. We're both firing away in the chat box, getting on top of a lot of these. So thank you. It's very much appreciated. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm just keeping up. I'd be perhaps been a little bit sniffy about veterinary employers by saying that most vet employers out there, unfortunately, only give the absolute bare minimum, and so any top up that you add on is just your money that you're adding on. But a few people have come back and said actually there are some really good employers out there, and Ebony just mentioned that Surrey Uni was giving a 20% pension contribution. So perhaps one of the benefits of working for the big universities might be that extra pension. So I suppose if I can summarise and Phil, Andrew, tell me if I'm wrong here. Look to your workplace pension first, have a look at that first, and then if you want to go further, that might be the time then to move on to looking at your own personal pension in your own right. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, certainly. And if I was giving advice to anyone, that would certainly be the order of approaching it as well. And something I didn't mention before is both myself and Phil, when we've been talking for the majority of this presentation, we've been talking about defined contribution schemes, which may be different to, as an example, the Surrey University scheme, because that might be a defined benefit scheme, so which operate differently, just to highlight that, and not to confuse issues as well, or try not to.
And one that comes in lots and lots, and I've got the same question in my head and I haven't found the answer yet. If I've moved lots of times, if I've got 4, 5, 6, 7 pension pots, and by all means say it depends, because you might say this, is it better to leave those 8 pension pots trickling away until I retire, or should I stick them all in one?
I'll go out on a limb and say consolidate, but where you consolidate depends, right? Because, broadly speaking, pensions do the same job, but it's the execution. So by that, I mean the cost of the administration, the quality of the administration, access to investments, access to functionality, access to support, education, and things like that. So, they do the same thing, but not all pensions are equal. All pension providers are equal.
I just add one thing to that, the other thing as well is obviously having them all in one place is a lot more easy to manage. You don't have to log into 7 or 8 different places depending on how important it is for you, versus the cost and the other points. And the second thing is typically, as with ours, I should mention, our all-in cost is 0.75%, but it does go down to 0.56 over £100,000. So if you bring them all together, you're likely, depending if you breach certain amounts of money saved, some providers will have lower costs at that point. So it's just another point to take into consideration.
What about if you, to play as devil's advocate, if you're saying you're only covered if something goes wrong with that pension fund, for instance, with you guys, you only get £85,000 back. Is there something there to say, should you maybe split your pensions into 2 different risk areas?
Go on, mate. Go on, you go. No, you go.
Okay. So yeah, no, I mean, yes, my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Andrew, is that is per sort of institution. So if you had 85,000, as it is with sort of cash in different banks, you would get that at every different bank. So that can be an argument. I believe that's correct, Andrew, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do need to make a bit more better distinction. So in terms of your pension money, that is held in trust outside of the organisation. So that cover is if Raindrop goes bust, your pension money will be safe. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but your pension money is always going to be safe. So Raindrop goes bust, your money's covered, and it just goes to another pension company who looks after it. The £85,000 is really about the investment that sits underneath, like BlackRock.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry. It's much deeper down. We have third parties who look after our money for you. We never touch it, which would be similar to everyone else as well. Yeah, if you're looking at Raindrop specifically.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question or whether, again, I complicated it. So
I think that cleared it up. I know the person that asked it initially hasn't replied yet in the chat, but that made sense to me. We do have a question here just saying, well, there's a couple around BlackRock. We've got, are there any dealing charges from BlackRock? Quite a specific question, I know, for Phil there.
Yeah. So no, I mean, what the BlackRock range funds that we offer are mutual funds. So what you get is when you put your money in, you get the price at the end of the day, and then well, actually at 12 o'clock specifically, but everyone gets the same price. There's no charge, like a £4 fee for an execution.
Yeah.
That often depends. Yeah, obviously different providers can charge that. We don't, as we mentioned before. Our fee is literally just that 0.75%. So nothing for execution. As we mentioned, we are transparent on that. If you were to buy maybe an exchange traded fund, then yes, sometimes they will charge £4 every time you execute or you do a deal. But for us, no.
Amazing. Thank you, Phil. And we've got another that is looking at both sides and looking at it equally. Are there any potential downsides of a self-investment personal pension that people should be aware of compared to a traditional pension?
So I maybe need to get some more clarity on this question, because I mean, at the end of the day, a self-invested personal pension, it is, I guess, the same sort of as a private pension as that you would get through Vanguard. The difference comes through maybe the technology and how we give you access to it and the investments. I mean, there are different types of private pensions we should mention. But I don't know if you're talking about other things like something we call a SAS, but I think that's probably a little bit beyond the scope of this conversation. I don't know if you get a different meaning from that, Andrew, than I did.
Can you repeat that? I was just answering a question. Sorry.
Yeah, we've got, what are the potential downsides of a self-investment personal pension like Raindrop compared to a traditional private pension?
So essentially they're the same thing, right? But
exactly.
And they do the same thing. Traditionally it's boiled down to your investment options. So there's a distinction between to be made there with Raindrop and other SIPs. Also, from a technical perspective, with SIPs you can purchase property and loans and things like that. So the terminology is misrepresented in marketing. Essentially, it means you've got greater diversity in investment options, but all intents and purposes, the function is the same. It's a long-term savings vehicle that has tax benefits. Hopefully that helps.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Certainly clears that up. And we did have a question a little bit earlier on, which I didn't see us touch on, but like I say, I did jump in a little bit later saying, can you discuss drawdown and withdrawal? If I retire at 65 and potentially live another 30 years, that's still a long-term investment horizon, and I'd like to still have my pension in stocks and equities and not just have low yield bonds.
Oh, I think I responded to that.
Let me.
That's from Jennifer, wasn't it? Oh, is she frozen or am I frozen?
No, all good. Oh, Katie might have done.
Sorry, everybody. Somehow my Zoom crashed.
Yeah, I think I answered that
You got that one?
question.
Great. Okay, grand. Thanks, Andrew.
Well, Paul, we'll take a couple more questions. Why don't you just pop the poll up now, as we've obviously reached our power hour, and let's just see how you're feeling now after this discussion. We hope we've moved you a couple of nudges up from your original score in terms of confidence. So how confident do you feel about taking the next step to support your pensions? With 1 being clueless and 10 being, I definitely know what I need to do next. And we had obviously quite a lot of low scores before, and we were just hoping to nudge you up a couple. We're aware that we're not going to answer everyone's personal, queries completely to get them maybe with all the information they need, but hopefully you've also found some actions that you can take, which will be great. So while that's running, keep the questions coming in. We are aware that people may have to jump off as we have gone over the hour, but I know that these lovely gentlemen and women would be happy to stay on for a little bit longer to answer any of the other questions that are coming through.
Shall I stop sharing and hand over back to you, Paul?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll just finish the poll. It looks like the bell-shaped curve has moved from sort of focusing on the 3s and 4s to around the 5s and 6s. So nice work, guys. I think we've answered quite a lot of questions there. Pensions are just, well, they're complicated and they're scary, and it's something that we can put our head in the sand and go, I'll do with it tomorrow, because I'm not going to see it until I'm 60, 70, and then all of a sudden you're 60 and 70. But there we go. Grand.
Question that wasn't asked was, I think one of the pre-event questions was about opening pension for kids, which is something that you can do.
Yep.
And without an income, you can contribute up to £3,600 gross. Effectively, you control the pension until child turns 18. So it might be something worthwhile doing for those parents that are out there.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Didn't know you can get a pension for kids. Cool. Right, guys, thanks very much. I know we're just over time now, so sort of coming to wrap up now. It's I suppose next steps to think about. Obviously, if you haven't already done so, a big call to sort of register with VetYou. It means that we can send you our newsletters, we can keep you updated with blogs and chats and little information. We'll stick in the chat, there's a little PDF. I mentioned it earlier, but I know some people have joined since then. There's a little PDF you can join with sort of a quick 101 or a few bits and pieces about how to get a pension. If you want to have a chat and discuss more in detail, if you feel that you want to talk to someone about all this sort of stuff, then get in touch and talk to an IFA. We've got Andrew. You can click through on our links and you can actually look at his calendar. A bit scary, isn't it? And choose a time that he's free, and book in a time over the next few weeks to have a chat with him, completely free, no obligation, just to make sure that you like him, he likes you, you understand and get on with each other, and see where you go from there. Alternatively, if you're feeling a bit more confident and want to go ahead and look at that pension straight away, then book a demo in with Raindrop and start a pension straight away. As Philip said, you can start it with £1. You can just get it going with £1 and then start increasing, decreasing, thinking about it next month, the month after. The huge benefit, I think, is as we start to move into that portfolio career, those locums, lots of different jobs, having that ability to increase, decrease, slow it down, turn the tap on, turn the tap off is such a relief compared to the more old-fashioned way of pensions and how they have been run for the last couple of 100 years. Ebony, what am I missing? There's certainly you and Katie are doing a lot on Instagram in terms of your Money Mondays.
And am I right in thinking, Raindrop, is there an offer on the table as well?
There is indeed. I apologize. The last thing that I should have ever forgotten. For everyone that took their Tuesday night out to come and watch us today, we're giving a free £25 into your pension if you use the VetYou link that I believe you guys will be supplying shortly or in the follow-up email. So yeah, if you do sign up today and set up your pension and put at least £1 into it, then we will top that up with an extra £25 for you.
Which is awesome, which is very kind. Thank you. Great. Sorry, I'll hand over to you, Paul.
Cool. Actually, there was just one final question that's just popped in, and I don't know the answer to it, actually. What happens if you move abroad? And can you move pensions to different countries? What is that an easy answer or not? If someone works here for a while.
Yes.
Sorry, Andrew.
The easy answer is yes. It's slightly more complicated than that, and it might not necessarily be worthwhile, but the easy answer is yes, you can.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any further questions before we sort of perhaps look at wrapping up? Because I know we're a couple of minutes over now. If you look in the chat box, there's some links coming in there in terms of the Raindrop link. And again, register with VetYou. The QR code's there if you want to fire. Sarah, I've been on a few links with you recently, and I keep putting QR codes up, and you keep telling me off saying your phone's not not able to do it yet. But there is a QR code for anyone who has a phone that can cope with it to go on and register with VetYou and book in a call with Andrew or book in a demo with Raindrop. And we'll be sending out to everyone a sort of a follow-up email with a recording of this, but also those links as well in the email. So if there's no further questions, then all I can say is just a massive thank you again for everyone coming on and having a listen. Pensions, they sound boring. They do feel a bit boring, but I suppose they mean that when you retire, you can actually stop being boring and start having a bit of fun. If you get it sorted now, the earlier you sort it, the better it is. A huge thank you to Andrew again. He's been with us for a number of years now. Thanks very much for explaining and helping us understand what a pension really is, because often most of us have no idea. And another great thank you to the team from Raindrop for coming in and showing what the future looks like for pensions. They're not old-fashioned. I haven't got to put a stamp on it and put it in the post in order to increase my monthly allowance. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Yeah, so
Thanks,
get a
guys.
date in your diary, people, to take action, whatever that one action is. Make sure it's in your diary to go and do it, because tomorrow doesn't exist. And age 38, I wish I'd taken action like 10 years ago. So tomorrow does not exist, people. Like, get it in the diary, get it done, find yourself an IFA, contact Raindrop, go and do your own research, get the question